Eagle looking great. Your go.
Hello, everyone, and welcome. No, I'm not going to do that. Sorry. I just can't get through the whole thing. Welcome back to another episode of the Sci-Fi Wise Guys. My name is Chris.
My name's Anthony. In space.
This is the third entry in Horror in Space. Our replacement for Spocktober. Spocktober.
Which is our replacement for, what was it? What was the one? Double Spooktober or something like that? I don't know if we had a name for it.
I've told the story before. I worked at a dealership once where the October sales event was Shocktober.
Yeah.
And I was just in the background of one of the infomercials throwing up the shocker.
Yeah.
The whole time in a luchador mask. So if you find that, let me know. But here on the Sci-Fi Wise Guys, besides doing weird hand signals, we watch and review science fiction and science fiction adjacent visual entertainment media, typically of the straight-to-stream variety. However, we went back to the past, back all the way to May 25th, 1979, for the seminal science fiction horror film, probably the very first of the genre. At least one that's actually a horror film, not just space, not just scary space.
I think by modern standards, maybe. Sure.
But we'll talk about that here in just a second. How are you doing, my friend?
I am fantastic.
Excellent.
We're right in the middle of this horror binge, and we started off strong, and then we've kind of the horror bits have kind of died down as we've gone. So I'm looking forward to the next few movies being even scarier.
Oh, this one didn't scare you?
No.
Well, that's fair. I guess we'll just go ahead and talk about it.
I was leaving it open for you to say something.
No. It scared me. I think the first time I ever watched it. By the way,
Sure.
You watched the 1979. I already mentioned it. Film Alien.
Alien
is a 1979 science fiction horror film directed by Ridley.
That's not right.
Ridley Scott and written by Dan O'Bannon. Great name.
Yeah. Returning to the Sci-Fi Wise Guys.
Yeah.
Podcast.
O'Bannon. Big man. I'm a big fan of the O'Bannon.
There you go.
So this movie scared me when I first watched it all the way back in
1979.
No, 1998, 1999. I watched it.
So you're like a young teenager?
Yeah.
Sure.
This is, I mentioned it, probably, like I said, the first true horror film in space.
We literally just watched Planet of the Vampires last week.
Yeah, and the only part that was scary about it is that we had to watch it. But let's just we'll just give a brief history lesson.
Oh.
Alien kickstarted so many different things. Like I said, it invented a genre pretty much on its own. Not to mention, it's also a great horror film and a great science fiction film on the merits. It's got a bunch of stars, big names, small names, people that you may recognize, a couple of that guy or two.
Yeah.
It created an entire franchise.
That's one way of saying John Hurt.
Well, I was going to say Yaphet Kotto.
Oh, yes, that too.
Big Yaphet Kotto fan here. Actually, like really, anytime I see him on screen, I'm like, hey, it's the guy from that James Bond, really racist James Bond movie.
Wait, which James Bond movie is that?
The one where he's in New Orleans.
The ones where he's racist? Okay, got it.
With all the the hoodoo and voodoo. Inspired a bunch of different people, a bunch of artists, a bunch of filmmakers. Like I said, it kickstarted its own franchise, Aliens. It gave us James Cameron, his ability to add a single letter to another movie. That famous story of him walking into the pitch meeting, just writing an S at the end of it.
I'm still waiting for Avatar's. I'm real upset.
But yeah, so Alien, it's taken a while for us to get around to this one. As far as I'm aware, this was your first viewing of it, right?
Yes.
Okay.
I saw it for the first time yesterday.
Okay.
Before I get to that, let's get some facts out of the way. As it stands today, on IMDb, it is sitting at 8.5 out of 10 stars with 920,000 ratings. The blurb: the crew of a commercial spacecraft encounters a deadly life form after investigating an unknown transmission. over on Rotten Tomatoes. This thing is sitting at 98% fresh with a 94% audience score. Might be the most highly rated thing on Rotten Tomatoes we've ever watched. The critics' consensus: a modern classic. Alien blends science fiction, horror, and bleak poetry into a seamless whole. And apparently they don't believe in the Oxford comma. Over on Metacritic is sitting at an 89 with universal acclaim and a 9.0 user score, also universal acclaim. And let's round it out with Letterboxd, 4.3 out of 5 stars. So what does that come to? 8.6.
Roughly, yeah.
A little bit of a longer blurb here. I'm going to read this. The tagline: in space, no one can hear you scream. So good. So good. During its return to the Earth, commercial spaceship Nostromo intercepts a distress signal from a distant planet. When a 3-member team of the crew discovers a chamber containing thousands of eggs on the planet, a creature inside one of the eggs attacks an explorer. The entire crew is unaware of the impending nightmare set to descend upon them when the alien parasite planted inside its unfortunate host is birthed. That gives away a bit of the goat, I think. It's a bit much, but that's what everyone else thought about it. And that's a great shot of Ripley there, Sojourner Weaver. That's great. Like I said, I saw this for the first time yesterday, so I'm way late to the party. It's been one of those movies that's it's been on my list to watch. You're like, oh yeah, I want to watch all the Alien movies, even the bad ones, just to say I've seen them, and I just never get around to it for lots of reasons. Not anything against the movie, just didn't get around to it. So I'm really glad that this was finally the excuse to watch it. And it is a fantastic science fiction flick. It is scary if you've never seen anything like it before, but I've seen so many things that are inspired by it that I think it, and there's so many scenes that are like, they're just spoiled for you out the go, right? Like, this is going to happen, and that's going to happen because you understand like the mythos. Because I've been in and around science fiction my entire life, and even if I miss this, I know how it goes, right? And so it wasn't as scary, I think, as they intended for it to be, but they didn't make it any less entertaining. It was very entertaining. So many tropes that I can see other movies after it like take on or parody or just outright steal. The acting is fantastic. Like the look of the sets and the way that the people are conducting themselves and their interactions are very, very interesting. I think Ridley Scott did a really good job of getting the crew or the actors to interact in very particular ways. I think everyone is going to say that Sigourney Weaver's performance was like a standout. A female lead in a horror sci-fi flick, being a badass, more or less. I personally, I thought John Hurt killed it. I mean, not that he's in the movie, that he's in the movie for very, very long, but I like John Hurt, or I like his work, I should say. And so it was cool to see him in so young in a role there, and really, really bring it. It's very interesting. I've already brought it up, and it's very interesting that we just watched, like the last 2 movies we watched Event Horizon, which is obviously influenced by Alien in a lot of ways. And we just watched Planet of the Vampires from 1965, which obviously influenced Alien in a lot of ways. We kind of watched these out of order, honestly. But I'm kind of glad we did. We kind of get to see the legacy, the kind of the proto-Alien, and then we get to see the real deal, right? And to go even further back, we reviewed Dark Star, I think earlier this year, which is a movie, the first movie written by Dan O'Bannon, directed by John Carpenter, which is a comedy. I would almost call it like a comedy version of Alien. It does a lot of the same things. The people interact with each other in a lot of the same ways, but for comedic effect. And it was a bit of a flop. It didn't do very well. And he comes back, and we talked about this on the Dark Star review. He comes back and writes a script for Star Beast. He's like, oh, if I can't make him laugh, maybe I can make him scream, right? Mm-hmm. And comes back with what eventually became Alien, working with a partner.
My favorite Dan O'Bannon quote about Alien. This is a direct quote. One thing that people are all disturbed about is sex. I said, that's how I'm going to attack the audience. I'm going to attack them sexually. and I'm not going after the women in the audience. I'm going to attack the men. I'm going to put every image I can think of to make the men in the audience cross their legs. And I mean, there's a lot of like, I'm not going to say it because it's possible it might trigger a few people, which, you know, we're not out here to do that. But he has said a lot of things about this movie, and there's a lot of stuff in it that you could consider, like just the way that the alien interacts with humans. A lot of the, especially in the second and third movie, it's just, there's a lot of really weird. Well, when I say weird, there's a lot of triggering stuff that he intentionally put in the movie. So
yeah,
Dan O'Bannon, crazy bastard.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, I think that's we can talk about that if you like. Like, it's a very interesting approach to horror and to making people uncomfortable. He's wanting to get that reaction from people, and from what I understand, a lot of it's actually toned down from the earlier versions of the script. Because, you know, it has to get funded in order to get made. Yeah, it has to release in a lot of markets where a lot of things just aren't going to fly. But yeah, crazy is a great way of putting it. I think that if you're like me and you haven't seen this movie, you should watch this movie. It's not as scary as you think, mostly because I think everything since then has tried to up the ante. So if you watch anything more recent, it is what it is. It does have besides the maybe not quite overt sexual themes, there's a lot of claustrophobia. Obviously, you're on a spaceship, you can't get out. That type of thing.
Tense.
Very tense.
Like
very. I would almost call it more suspense than I would horror.
Well, maybe at this point, yeah. Like if you, by
modern standards, yeah.
Like if you're showing this to an 18-year-old for the very first time who's never seen a horror movie, they might get scared. I don't know. 18,
14, yeah.
But it's rated R.
Oh, sorry, 17. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, unless they're your kid and you feel that you're comfortable sharing with them, something that might
parental guidance,
that
legal
might,
guardian,
you know, screw them up for the rest of their life. Feel free, parents. We're not out here telling you what to do. But definitely at this point, far more suspense. Like and I think part of that is that for a slasher movie, spoilers in 3, 2, 1, the most violence you get almost doesn't involve any blood. There's one particular scene, and if you want to spoil the movie for parts of it for people,
let's do it. Yeah, if they're like at this point, please go watch the movie. If you're fine with spoilers, then stick around.
But when they find out Ash isn't a human, like that's the most violent part, and like there's hardly any blood. I mean, I think the weirdest part is when he shoves the rolled up magazine down Ripley's throat, trying to suffocate her. Which I think he was trying to do that to make it to where like there were no like the marks around her neck or whatever.
Right.
But like when the alien kills people, like with the exception of the very end, you don't see any real human carnage. Like it's just they get taken away and then you never see them again. Maybe that's part of the reason why it's not as quote unquote scary, is because like there's a couple of jump scares.
Sure.
But for the most part, you're right. It's definitely a suspense thriller at this point. Because everything has escalated, right?
Well, not only that, but even, I suppose. But it's scary, it's creepy, it's tense. I feel like if they had shown a bit more of the violence, and I think that the problem with showing a bit more of the violence or a bit more of the gore, you would also show more of the alien. And I know they were trying to show less of the xenomorph, like as little as possible. So I don't know how you would do it. I know that there's a director's cut or a DVD with a bunch of deleted scenes, or maybe both, out there. So maybe that's something I might be interested in watching, just to see. I don't know. Ridley Scott and director's cuts don't exactly have the best track record in my mind, but maybe that would be worth checking out. In addition to having seen this movie, in addition to seeing the sequels to this movie, which I know are very different. You said you saw this for the first time in the 90s. Like, were you scared back then? Like, do you remember like how would you compare it to other horror movies you saw as a kid?
Because I hadn't, because like my mom isn't necessarily down with horror movies. Like I think she enjoys a decent action flick here or there. We watched The Long Kiss Goodnight when I was like 15 or 16, and that's a very graphic movie. And she was totally cool with it. We're just like sitting on the floor while Samuel L. Jackson's like tied up naked in a basement. And I'm like,
what is happening?
Okay, sure, whatever. Like, Gina Davis with all those teeth and no gums. She's just murdering everybody. But it's cool, whatever. But no, she was never really down with scary movies. My dad isn't the biggest scary movie fan either.
Sure. No, both my parents don't. That's why I don't watch horrors, because they didn't watch horrors, so I was way behind on all of it.
So as I hung out with other people like my age, 15, 16, 17, going over to people's houses, scary movie nights for Halloween and in the month of October. That's when I saw this. I think it was at a friend's house. And no, I was scared. Because like I said, I hadn't really seen a whole lot. And then we watched one of the Jason movies. And I was like, oh, so this is what a scary movie actually is. Okay, cool. Because he stabs a dude through the neck with a harpoon. Right. Yeah. Awesome.
Yeah.
No, but I didn't watch a lot of horror movies until I was in my mid to late 20s. And by then, the classics,
sure.
I think I talked about it last week. I watched the original Dracula in theaters. Not when it came out, but recently. But I remember watching that on VHS.
Chris the Immortal.
Yeah. But like all the Freddy movies.
Sure.
Wes Craven's New Nightmare.
I love how people call them the Freddy movies and the Jason movies, and that's not their
Nightmare
names.
on Elm Street and Friday the 13th. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I knew what you meant. So did everyone else. My point is that maybe those films were poorly named. If everyone's just going to call them something else, maybe you should just go with it. Okay. I do not have a 1-star review for this movie. Like, we're not going to get into that bit because they all say the same thing. They all talk about the movie being slow, boring, nothing happens for a very long time. It's a lot of setup. There's hardly any special effects. You hardly ever get to see the alien. Basically, they're all complaining about what the movie is, which is exactly what it is. It's a slow suspense sci-fi film set in 1979. And I think, Ridley Scott wanted no one to he wanted to make sure that the alien didn't look like a dude in a rubber suit, which is spoiler alert, which is what it was. So he shows it at weird angles. He shows it in, only in pieces. You never see it like head on, that type of thing. And
extreme close-ups.
Yeah, extreme close-ups. Lots of like the scene with like the water falling through in a spaceship. Like
that's cool.
Whatever. Sure.
Makes sense
in the cargo bay. Yeah.
Yeah.
And so there's a lot of movement, so it's hiding the effect of the rubber suit even more so. I don't agree this is what the 1-star reviewers. I think the movie, has a very deliberate pace. And if you go into it thinking it's going to be an action horror flick, well, you're wrong. Yeah. And anyone would tell you you're wrong, and you got to change your expectations. But at the same time, I think maybe he did it a little too much, or showed a little too little, like a little overkill in his wanting to hide the alien and make it more mysterious, that type of thing. Because I would agree that it would have been much more interesting to see more of the alien, not like a whole picture of it or it standing there, but just more of it, more of the gore. And I've read through a ton of the trivia and a lot of what the deleted scenes are and that type of thing. And some of it, I'm like, yeah, that could have worked. And other things, I'm like, yeah, I get why they cut that. At the end, we had a 2-hour-long movie, so it is what it is. Sorry, go ahead.
I was just going to say, like, those 1-star reviews complaining about how it's slow, it doesn't show much of the alien. Like, it's kind of what makes it great, right? Like,
right.
It's we know like who Dracula is because he's on the title screen, right? Like we know who Dracula is because we know Bela Lugosi is, but like when that moment when Kane dies on the like dining room table or whatever, when he has that fit and that little chest burster pops out, like that's probably the most you really see of the alien for 40 minutes. You know, like you get that one shot of him in the vents with Dallas, but other than that, like you spend your entire time like dealing with the aftermath with the survivors, like every single person that is there, like you're experiencing the story through their eyes. And I think like, I get it that in 2023 that might be difficult, might be considered quote unquote boring for certain people, but if you look at it from the perspective of what the movie is, like, well, it makes sense to me that you would not want to show too much of the alien.
I would agree. I would agree with the intent. I think that part of that is on. It kind of reminds me of the 1-star review we read for the 1990s or 1990, the movie released in 1990, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, in which is like the guy was saying, "Oh, we're being gaslit into think this is a good movie," and like complaining about the things that we all like about the movie.
Yeah.
I mean, part of that is that like everyone says this movie is amazing. Everyone loves Alien. It is. I mean, it's we saw the critic and user reviews as we talked about it. We're saying good things about it. So when you're told, "Oh yeah, it's this awesome horror movie in space," and this is some kid in the aughts or more recent, and we're like, "Yeah, this is this amazing horror film," and they're used to seeing whatever is in the theater right now. Yeah, this is probably boring.
Yeah.
Like it's not hitting that scare factor often enough. As a slow burn, though, I love it.
Yeah.
So I think it's part of it's just societal expectations, the zeitgeist, if you will, kind of doing them dirty. But that's why I didn't pick out a particular one because there are so many of them. They all said the same thing, and I just wanted to get your perspective, I guess, in general of how you would feel about it. I personally wouldn't have. I appreciate the slow pace. It actually does remind me a lot of Planet of the Vampires in that regard, not just because of the aliens of the giants or the bones of the giant aliens.
The navigators, whatever they're called.
The space jockeys or something like that.
Yeah, space jockeys. That's right.
Yeah. But also in just its pacing. Like it feels like an older film in its pacing. I think my only real complaint about this movie is I couldn't understand a thing anyone was saying. Especially when they were talking over the radio to each other and then they would reply, like they could hear it. And I just was anytime they put distortion on the voices, I was gonna have a real hard time following along. I had to EQ it a little differently to like be able to hear what was happening. I don't know if that was on purpose. I mean, I know it was on purpose when they were on the rock or on the planet and they're walking off in their spacesuits, and even Ash is having a hard time understanding them. But when they're on the ship talking to one another, it didn't really make sense to me. I was like, we should be able to hear what's happening.
Well, I'd like to talk about some of the actors.
I would love to talk about some of the actors. Who do you want to hit up first?
We can do Sigourney Weaver here in a minute, but I already mentioned Yaphet Kotto.
Mm-hmm.
Great career. Probably not as good as it should have been, but yeah, he was Mr. Big / Kananga on Live and Let Die. Did a bunch of stuff like, I think right up until 2014, where he was a voice of Parker in the Alien Isolation video game. Which
that's cool.
Really cool.
That's nifty.
But just kind of like his career just never really took off, but he had a successful one, I'd say, for an actor. Ian Holm, Bilbo Baggins. I remember like watching Lord of the Rings for the first time, and I was like, oh shit, that's Ash from Alien. Okay, cool. Harry Dean Stanton, famous that guy. He was in the Avengers.
Yeah, he had that one scene in Avengers that everyone knows. Yeah.
Big time actor. Tom Skerritt.
Oh, sorry. 200. Before we move on, 207 acting credits. When you say big time actor, I mean the guy is a working actor.
Yeah.
The last thing came out in 2020, so he's still doing it.
But Tom Skerritt, probably my favorite actor from the movie. He's Viper in Top Gun. He's in Contact.
Yeah.
He plays a character named David Drumlin. But just had a really interesting career. Came back for Alien Isolation as well as Captain Dallas.
Oh, that's cool.
You talked about John Hurt, famous John Hurt.
R.I.P.
Yeah, The Elephant Man. That's an interesting movie. It's probably not one for the Sci-Fi Wise guys, but if you haven't seen it, you should watch it. If you think your life sucks for any reason, you should watch The Elephant Man. I mean, seriously.
Wow.
But Veronica Cartwright, who played Lambert, been in a bunch of stuff. Very famous horror actress. The Birds, The Witches of Eastwick, Invasion of the Body Snatchers. Just those are big highlights. She's got 3 things in pre-production or in production right now. Yeah.
So 3 upcoming acting gigs.
But yeah, so I mean, I think for the most part, I think you say Yaphet Kotto is probably the least successful actor from this movie.
What is success? If he's working and doing what he likes, that's success, right?
I just mean like,
sure.
All these actors have a big time role, right?
Yeah.
Like Tom Skerritt was in Top Gun and he was in Contact. Sigourney Weaver is the Aliens franchise.
Sure.
John Hurt, 1984.
But they don't bring
V for
back any of the
Vendetta.
other actors to the other Alien movies?
No. Ian Holmes, Bilbo Baggins, but like Yaphet Kotto is Mr. Big from Live and Let Die, and Parker from Alien. So
sure.
Yeah. So the alien was played by an actor named Balaji Badejo, and
His
I
only role.
apologize if I'm butchering that. But yeah, that's interesting.
He was I can't remember where they found him. I read the whole story about it, but he's like 7 foot tall and super lanky, and they were like, perfect. All right, we'll use this guy. And then they had him do all sorts of like he did Tai Chi and like learn how to mime so he could get his motions correct, and then was really happy to be part of it from what it could tell, and then never did anything else.
Yeah. They found him drinking at a Soho bar.
There you go. There you go.
Oh no, he died from sickle cell anemia. That sucks.
That sucks. There was one other like stunt man who was also in a suit for some of the scenes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Which, I mean, should probably get billed as well, but whatever.
Eddie Powell was uncredited as Alien.
Mm-hmm.
And he has also stunts.
Yeah.
He was in Willow.
Oh.
Aliens.
Like the good Willow or the
Prince
bad
of
Willow?
Thieves, Legend. Yeah, man.
Yeah.
This dude had a career.
I think we could wax poetic about a lot of these actors and a lot of the influence. I mean, we're not going to talk about Ridley Scott. I think if you know, you know. If you don't, go look it up yourself. We've talked about Dan O'Bannon before. I don't know if we need to. I mean, he's done a lot. What I want to ask you about is this comes up a lot, actually. This came up in Event Horizon, and this came up in 3022. But why in the hell are they lighting fires on their spaceships? Second question, Chris, just think about that. But the follow-up question, let's pretend that it's perfectly safe and there's no harm, right? Why are they getting to situations where the ship is broke down? In Event Horizon, they were like, we got 20 hours of oxygen left. And he's like, oh, lights a cigarette. And I'm like, what are you doing, right? And this movie, like, why? Like, I get maybe it's the 70s, it's cool, right? But like, I don't understand, Christopher. Help me understand.
Fire is awesome. No, I mean, no, it's really what it is. It's just like, fire is a primal force of humanity, right? It's the thing that differentiated us from the apes, was our ability to manipulate our surroundings and brave the cold and go out in the night and not be afraid anymore. So I can't explain why they smoke cigarettes.
Okay.
Right. I just can't do that one. That's a stylistic choice. It never makes any sense. But like the idea that go ahead.
Sorry, no, could you just imagine like any alien on a Star Trek episode, like visiting the Enterprise, and he's getting shown around by Riker and Troy, and he's just like, oh, this is 10 forward is awesome. And he just pulls out a cigarette and starts smoking one. Like, what do you think their reaction would be?
Tasha Yar would be like, hey man, drugs are bad. Okay.
Drugs are bad.
No, but like
she's dead.
No, but like the idea that like this alien's hunting them, like it just takes us back to the most basic part of human survival, which is to not die from the animal, right? Like when we were huddled around in the cave and there was a fire crackling at the center, and Unga Bunga, Thok, and whatever, the rest of the cavemen names were, they would pick up a torch and go out into the night.
Sure.
And that's the reason why they weren't killed by the hyenas or the tigers or the lions or the saber-toothed tigers or whatever, right? That's what kept us alive. And so
we have Prometheus to thank for that, if that's correct.
Yeah, thanks. He was actually just an episode of Supernatural.
Was it? Oh wow!
Yeah.
Spoilers for that show. Well, this wasn't. I was trying to make an alien reference and a joke at the same time.
There you go. But
you took it even further.
Just the primal feeling, and something that we can all relate to as humans, is using fire to drive away.
Sure.
The hunters.
That doesn't explain cigarillos in space.
No, it doesn't. It doesn't. You can't. You just can't explain it, right? Like
it doesn't. It's just. I don't know. I don't know.
Again, it's literally just a stylistic choice, that, and part of it, like I think like things like Event Horizon it's supposed to like kind of show, like I think a lot of movies that like hinge on a lot of science fiction, like space sci-fi from the 70s, 80s, 90s. Yeah. Like you're still trying to channel that like World War II, Vietnam War aesthetic.
Yeah.
where you got these guys, a band of brothers, where smoking was all the rage. So these writers and these directors, their parents smoked in living rooms. They heard stories about it. Commercials were all over the place. So it's literally just, I think, them pulling the artistic like inspiration, which is why you don't really see, without getting too far into it, but that's why you really don't see smoking now in a lot of movies. It's just that it's less a part of our society.
Yeah. But I guess I understand why people smoke. I get that no matter how bad it is for you, it'll forever look cool. It's still
doesn't smell cool.
No, it does not.
No,
I didn't say that. But at the same time, you're in space. There's a limited supply.
Right.
Yeah.
Again,
but I get it. I get it.
It's just to show that the characters are.
But you're right. In the case of Event
badasses.
Horizon and maybe 3022, they're trying to invoke that older, look, that vibe, if you will, of things like Alien. And I love Mr. Suits, but I don't know if I compare him to Ridley Scott. It's just, that's unfortunate. I know, but
he's not even as good as Tony Scott. Shout out Tony, R.I.P.
Jeez, you're doing John Suits dirty.
Amen. Look. When he can make Top Gun, Days of Thunder, The Last Boy Scout, Crimson Tide, Enemy of the State, The Fan, Spy Game, Man on Fire, Unstoppable, and The Taking of Pelham 1, 2, 3, maybe Johnny's got a spot.
He can't make those movies because they've already been made.
No, I'm just saying make movies as good as those.
Oh, sure. Did we watch Taking of Pelham 1, 2, 3 together? I feel like we did.
Yeah.
Like in somebody's bedroom.
It sounds weird when you say it like that, but the answer to that question, I think, is yes.
Yeah. I said it the way I said it. I know what I'm doing around here.
Yeah, the worst movie that Tony Scott made is probably Beverly Hills Cop 3.
Hmm.
And that's better. And that's better than the best John Suits movies.
I don't know about that. That feels like a bit much. Breach was okay.
I'm sorry. I was wrong. Beverly Hills Cop 2. Which point still stands.
So did you have, besides the people smoking cigarettes, did you have an idiot of the movie? And like the easy option here is whoever gave Ash those orders, right? But they're kind of, but they're the corporation, they're whomever,
the Wayland Yutani Corp.
Yeah. So out of the crew,
I think it's difficult to assign an idiot outright because it part of the thing that makes horror movies quote unquote scary is a lot of it is human story, right?
Sure.
Like for example, when Ash overrides the door lock and lets Kane on the ship, that's when it hits the fan, right?
Oh yeah.
But Ash is working under orders.
Yeah.
So like and
he's a robot. He can't defy those orders.
So I think that like my idiot of the movie might be Lambert, but at the same time it might be Parker, because when they are confronted by the alien, he just doesn't shoot it because he's telling Lambert, get out of the way, and she's so frozen in fear and she can't get past it that he jumps at it, which is, I know he's trying to be the hero, he's trying to save his friend, save his companion, but go ahead and feel free to edit this out. I'd have let that motherfucker burn. I'd have lit that thing on fire. And if Lambert happened to suffer some 3rd-degree burns because of it, hey, we got a med bay.
Yeah, that's fair.
Yeah,
that's fair. I get where his mind is at. I don't know where her mind is at, and hopefully I never will.
Yeah.
So I'm not gonna necessarily judge her for that. I'm gonna say that Ripley is the idiot of the movie.
Oh, interesting. A zag.
Yeah. I'm gonna do this. This is more of a zig than a zag, but they've split up into 2 teams. They're trying to find the alien. It's still smaller, or they think it's still smaller. They find Jones instead, or the Jones, the cat. They find the cat.
Jones the cat.
Yeah, they find the cat instead, and Brett lets the cat escape. And they're like, "Oh, we don't let the cat escape because now it's going to set off our sensors again. Like we need to capture it." And then Parker tells him, "Go get the cat." And Ripley's like, "Yeah, go get the cat and then catch up with us." I'm like, no, the whole point of y'all going in teams is so that y'all can't get picked off. And Ripley, 2nd or 3rd in command on the ship.
3rd in command.
Yeah. But definitely in command of their little 3-man group, is like, punishment, go offer yourself up to the alien in the next room.
It's a fair point.
And like, that was, I think, the dumbest decision made by anyone in the movie, because a lot of people are like following orders. They don't understand the full impact of what's happening, but now they know, right? Now they know that this thing is popped out of Kane. It has acid for blood, almost poking a hole through the whole ship. And we're just going to send you off on your own. I'm just saying. No. And then to a slightly lesser extent, she leaves the shuttle to go get the cat. And I get it. I do. I mean, I've had pets. I 100% understand. But there's a limit. And the limit for the cat or the dog or the turtle is way lower than the limit for myself or like other people that are with me. You know?
I mean, it's controversial to say that you'd let your beloved animal die.
It is.
But here's the deal. At the end of the day, that animal's going to die anyways.
Well, we're all going to die.
Well, no, hear me out on this one, right?
Okay.
Like in the zombie apocalypse, like I was watching some movie with Elizabeth, and it was one where the zombies no, it was zombie apocalypse. What's the movie with the what's his face from The Office? Jim from The Office? Hush? No, not Hush.
Quiet Place. Yeah,
The Quiet Place, right? And like any noise attracts these freaking aliens that come and kill you.
Sure.
My dog would get me killed instantly.
Yeah.
And so like is it outside of the realm of possibility that I would just let my beloved dog die?
Oh, your dog in particular?
Yeah.
I think you'd have to kill it.
Like maybe.
That dog.
Like I love
your dog.
I love Jack.
Great dog.
She's a great dog, but she barks at anything that moves, and she would get me killed within minutes.
A leaf and a breeze.
Yeah,
yeah.
But like, there's guilt, right? And I would carry that guilt for a long time because I would be alive.
And I guess she also that's very fair. I guess that she also had time, right? Because she got everything started to get ready. She had time, but she's still like leaving safety. You know,
sure.
It's a lot, and that's why I said to a lesser extent. I still think sending Brett off to die was the biggest mistake anyone made up to that point in the movie, and that's why she gets my vote for idiot of the film.
That's fair.
Still the hero.
Yeah,
for sure. I'm looking forward to watching Aliens.
I mean, maybe the person who made the self-destruct sequence as complicated as possible, but I think there's a reason why
there's definitely a reason why
self-destruct sequences are as complicated as possible.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Can we talk about what in the heck the alien was doing at the end of the movie?
I think
I've read like what it's supposed to be doing, but it doesn't come across very well.
It's just chilling.
It's just hanging out. Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah. I've read that like in early scripts or like early versions of it that it only lives for a few days. And so it's basically old and dying. Like it's just because how it gets so big so quickly. They were also supposed to find a couple of like I think Dallas and Brett as eggs. There was that scene was in the script, maybe even filmed. I'm not sure. And so it was originally supposed to be like a quick life cycle, and so it's just lethargic essentially. I don't know. There's a lot of fan interpretations for it, but I didn't know what your interpretation was for it because to me, I was just kind of like, what is happening?
My interpretation is that because like I think they even talk about it like changes in the environment could affect it and slow it down. So I think like while the Nostromo is going through its self-destruct process, like there's fire, electricity,
steam, and noise.
Life support's probably experiencing some sort of complications and issues, and it's just like it's hardy, but it's being affected. So I mean, and that's what I got, and it was it got onto the ship because it was going to enter its hibernation cycle. Which is the aliens smart enough to come to the conclusion that it should get on the shuttle?
I think the shuttle is just quieter and less going on, right?
But yeah, it's not smart enough to like. Is it smart enough to know the self-destruct sequence? Question A. Question B. Is it smart enough to know that Ripley was going to get her off or get it off the Nostromo? Question B. Question C. Why was Ripley making a bunch of noise while she was turning off, like while she was disabling the airlock? She's trying to calm herself. I get it, but that's it's a weird ending. It's probably the only part of the movie that really doesn't make any sense is what the alien is doing, but that's a byproduct of editing.
Maybe if it had been obvious that it was like sleeping or something, that might have made more sense. But it wasn't. It dying the way it did was pretty cool, actually. So like that little bit is a bit odd, but then its actual like demise, awesome. Yeah, really well done. Yeah,
like maybe they could have thrown a line in there where when she gets on the shuttle, she's like, "Ooh, it's cold in here. I guess the life support isn't working," or something.
But then they couldn't have her undressed to nothing. Yeah.
It's like probably the weirdest part of any movie I'd see. Like,
Yeah,
for a
it's super weird.
Those aren't even practical.
Though her undergarments are extremely impractical.
Unnecessary.
The first, I was like, why is she doing? I figured she's undressing to get into hypersleep or hibernation or whatever they're calling it, right? But like what she's wearing doesn't make any sense. And I'm assuming from a little bit from what I've read and a little bit of my own conjecture that it's because of from earlier versions of the film or the script where there are more sexual overtones. She's about to be attacked, and so it's trying to make her more vulnerable, but it just comes across as kind of weird and out of place.
It's creepy.
Actually, the only thing I could really find about directly talking about that scene was James Cameron talking about how much he hated it.
It's because it's dumb.
That's there's one of the few things James Cameron's ever said that I've agreed with.
Really? You never agreed with any of his points on submersible piloting?
I've never really, I'm not well versed. So I've never really read about it. I especially hated it when he said, "I want to make 17 more Avatar movies." Whenever he said that, I was like, "Oh man, no."
The dude made one of my favorite movies of all time. I give him a lot of pass.
Sure.
Well, let me take that back. He's made.
Do we really want to get into? Maybe we should do it. We should review Aliens at some point.
Well, I was talking about The Abyss.
Right. Sure. But I actually thought you were. I figured you were talking about something completely different. But that's
T2?
interesting. You were talking about The Abyss. Yeah, I assumed you were talking about T2.
Well, that's why that's why I started counting. I was like, he's made a lot of movies that I really like. Now that I think about it.
But no, we should watch Aliens at some point for the podcast.
Yeah,
could be a lot of fun.
Yeah, True Lies, Terminator 2, The Abyss, Titanic. And I really like the first Avatar movie. I think it's a great sci-fi flick.
I've never seen it.
Piranha 2, The Spawning. It's pretty good.
Did he wrote
screenplay?
He wrote the screenplay for First Blood Part 2? I did not know that. Interesting. I wish I could filter out all the video games based on his stuff from his IMDb page.
We should watch his short film, Xenogenesis.
His very first one? That could be fun.
Yeah.
When we do another short film, we'll probably end up doing one right after Horror and Space Month. I like to spread those out. So that's maybe we'll throw that in there. It could be fun. Yeah. Overall, great flick. Do recommend. Definitely influential. It has a very interesting position in the sci-fi, in the history of science fiction media and movies. So I'm very glad to have finally seen it. And I would recommend watching it and some of the other movies we've mentioned, like Dark Star and Planet of the Vampires, just to see kind of where it's coming from. And then, of course, there's a litany of things that follow it. If you have suggestions for other things we should watch outside of Horror and Space Month, you can email us, scifiwiseguys@gmail.com. We're also on all the social medias at scifiwiseguys. Just look for our logo.
Stay healthy, stay hydrated, and don't let the science officer override the third in command's order to not violate quarantine.
Follow quarantine procedure.
At all times.
Yes.
Wear a mask.
Wash your hands.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Has landed.
This movie was nothing like I expected. I really did expect more horror. Like activate. I was like, okay, it's gonna be scary. Like psyching myself up, especially after Event Horizon.
Yeah, I think if this movie was made in 2020,
oh sure,
like it would be a much more horror film.
Well, and that's the thing is like I think in 2020 they would have made the alien 100% CGI. We would have seen a ton of it. So would it have been scary? Would it have not? Like it would have still needed like the care taken that Ridley Scott and we didn't even talk about what is his name H.G.
Geiger.
Yeah, who designed like the alien and everything. Like it was the designer for the sets and stuff. Amazing work. Amazing. I mean, his artwork I think speaks for itself. The guy's awesome.